Today, we're taking a close look back on the economy of 2025 and what it means for the upcoming year of 2026. Now, for all of us who have been here, 2025 has been a year of contrasts. Across Alberta, municipalities have faced the ongoing impacts of global economic uncertainty, rising inflation, volatile markets, and the ever-present chatter about a potential global recession. Now, at the same time, many communities have shown remarkable resilience, leveraging regional partnerships, strategic planning, and innovative initiatives to maintain momentum. So the big question is this: are Alberta's municipalities on a steady path towards prosperity? Or are we bracing for a year that could be as unpredictable as a roller coaster? The answer, as we'll hear today, is more nuanced and far more interesting. Today's discussion will give us an insider's view on how municipalities are navigating challenges, what strategies worked in 2025, and what the priorities and opportunities will be in place for 2026. From supporting local businesses and attracting investment, to building resilient infrastructure and fostering regional collaboration, our guest will take us behind the curtain on the work being done to grow Alberta's economy, one municipality at a time. So joining me for today's roundtable discussion are three leaders who are at the forefront of regional economic development. Bob Bezpalko, Executive Director of Alberta Hub. Peter Casarella, Executive Director of South Grow Regional Initiative. And Paul Salvatore, Executive Director of the Central Alberta Economic Partnership. Each of these organizations plays a unique role in connecting municipalities, supporting local economies, and shaping the growth strategies that help communities thrive. So, whether you're a municipal leader, a local business owner, or simply curious about how regional economies shape the communities that we all live in, this conversation is for you, as this is Municipal Affairs. Across Canada, our cities, towns, villages, and rural communities are alive with stories waiting to be told. Stories of innovation and economic development, resilience in the face of the housing challenges, and the financial hurdles municipalities overcome every day. At the Cross Border Network, we bring these stories to life. From coast to coast to coast, we're connecting Canadians to the issues shaping our communities and showcasing the people working tirelessly to make them thrive. With your support, we can expand our reach, amplify more voices, and shine a light on the challenges and triumphs of municipal life. For as little as $3.99 a month, you can help us grow and continue sharing the stories that matter most. Join us today and be part of this important mission. Together, we can tell more stories, build stronger communities, and make a real difference. Support the Cross Border Network now. Visit www.crossborderinterviews.ca today. Everyone, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about the economy of 2025 and looking forward into 2026. Before we get started, as many people may not know who you are and what your organizations are, where your organizations are located, I'm just going to quickly, if you don't mind, get you to briefly describe the role your organization plays in supporting municipalities and regional economic development in the province of Alberta. Starting with yourself, Paul.
Well, Chris, I think all of us are sort of in the business of working with our members, and our members generally include municipalities across the regions that we're part of, and also just connecting those municipalities to industry and business and identifying the opportunities that will help them move forward, help them grow, help them develop over time.
And for those who may not know where the Central Alberta Economic Partnership lies, where would that be located in the province of Alberta?
Yeah, we like to say we're the meat and the sandwich between Calgary and Edmonton. So our head office is in Red Deer, but we have members from Clearwater County and north of there over to following the Red Deer River almost to Drumheller, and then back down to around Didsbury. And so that's kind of the area that we cover.
Awesome. Bob, for yourself, how does and I want to make sure I get the title right here correctly, the Northeast Alberta
Albert,
Information Hub, and
you
where is
nailed
it
it.
located?
Thanks, Chris. Well, a lot like Paul was saying, being a regional economic development alliance, collaboration regionally. From Edmonton, if you go east on Highway 16 all the way to the Saskatchewan border, city of Lloydminster, that's our southern boundary. And then we go up through the MD of Bonnyville, Cold Lake, Athabasca, Lac La Biche. We cover 10 counties, over 55,000 square kilometers. We have a total of 48 members. Like I mentioned, counties, towns, over 3,000, under 3,000 villages. And of course, a main, how do I word this? Alberta Hub made a very strategic direction to include our colleges. We have two colleges, as well as an Indigenous university, business and industry. And of course, it is business and industry. That's what economic development is all about. We have three core mandates. The biggest one, of course, is enabling investment. Uh, whether it's a young family moving in to that $1 billion smokestack. The biggest thing is that communities need to work together. I live in a town, 1,200 people. We can only do so much. We have to reach out to our neighbors, and again, promote our value proposition, like Cape and Peter's organization. They have certain strengths that they highlight. So that's where we're located. That's what we focus on. And we're big on collaboration with chambers, community futures, because as you know, Chris, economic development is a team sport.
It certainly is, and we'll get into that team sport a little bit later in the interview. Peter, for yourself, for the South Grow Regional Initiative, where are you located, and how do you help your local municipalities and local community area?
Yeah, you could probably best define the South Grow region as the trade area for the city of Lethbridge down here in the southern central part of the province. Our area is heavily based on the agricultural economy, and we really lean our work into that angle, enabling success there. If I were to add anything to what my colleagues have said, is that the REITAs, including South Grow, we really create opportunities. We create the fundamental baseline conditions in which investment and growth can thrive by doing those projects that all of our communities have a shared interest in, but none of them would go out and do themselves by themselves because they're bigger than the mandate of that individual community. So when communities come and sit on our boards and participate in our organizations, it's as citizens of an economic region, not necessarily just as representatives of their town. Together, they are much more powerful and impactful than they could be by themselves.
To use Paul's analogy at the beginning of his answer, this is kind of the sandwich that is Alberta. We got the north, we got the center, and we got the south here. So I'm very much appreciative of this as well. I want to start by looking back on the last 12 months, if you don't mind. And I'm going to start with Bob for this question. And I want all three of you to answer this if possible. Looking back on the last 12 months, we've seen the global economy be in complete upheaval, let's put it that way, as nicely as I possibly can. We see global challenges, we see trade challenges, we see global talk of global recession. Looking at your region specifically, how did your region handle the economy from a regional perspective in 2025, Bob?
That's a great question. And when you look back on 2025, you can throw in a municipal election that we faced as well. From a global perspective, the tariffs that came in, I mean, what happened, and it was an event that took place that shifted everything globally. For us on the local front, the tariffs, yes, it did affect our major investors. Of course, energy is one of our major economic drivers. We produce oil and gas in our region through the CHOPS method, basically cold, heavy oil producing sand with pumps, as opposed to we do have SAGD and the mining that goes up north. So there was a bit of a slowdown and it affected the financing that, if anything, meeting with global investors that were looking at our region, it was all more about the financing and the wait and see. To me, that was the biggest factor there. The technology was there, feedstock was there, labor, was there as well. But if anything, it was that financing that put a pause on some major projects, whether it was in agriculture, oil and gas. Of course, we're dealing with, we have CFB 4-wing, Cold Lake in our region, and the federal government is spending billions of dollars on the F-35s, and we all heard the story on the F-35s. Canada bought 8. They can buy another 16, but now they're looking at the tariffs and, the supply chains, and they're looking elsewhere. So I guess it comes down to what we thought was great a year or two ago and solid, definitely changed, and the pause was definitely hit. So hopefully they put their foot back on the gas pedal and move forward after things settle down a bit.
Peter, for yourself in the southern part of the province in South Grow, what was the outlook like for the last 12 months from your perspective?
I think the order of the day has been uncertainty, and we're going to see that continue for a while. We've been telling ourselves for a very, very long time, for decades, that we need to diversify away from just having one overwhelming customer, which is the United States. And the past 12 months has just really, really driven that point home to our people in Southern Alberta like never before. Because like many areas of Alberta, Southern Alberta really relies on exports. We are an export-heavy location. The vast majority of what we grow in our fields gets put into shipping containers and shipped overseas for processing elsewhere. And a lot of our economic development focus has been getting more of that processing here, but that's a long-term game. It takes a long time to do that. And so in the last 12 months, there's been a lot of movement in our industries in Southern Alberta to diversify where they're selling their products to try to get into new markets, or to try to increase the share of their export products that are going to markets that are not controlled by the United States. There's a lot of risk mitigation going on too. When I talk to businesses throughout the region and talk to investors are being cautious. There's very much a wait and see approach that's happening right now. There are interesting policies that have rolled onto the scene in things like, carbon markets, that kind of thing, which are making folks interested in Southern Alberta as a destination for investment. But there's so much uncertainty that it's hard to build out business cases with long-term, chance of it actually still being the case when they actually get their hundreds of millions of dollars on the ground and their facilities built. And then from our established businesses, one of the big things that happened in the last 12 months was really the numbers on immigration being really dialed back, and it getting a lot harder to bring in the kind of workers that we need. And Canada doesn't suffer from the benefits and the problems of immigration equally. Places like Southern Alberta that are heavily rural, we would love to get more immigration. All of our communities would love to have more newcomers coming in and getting settled in their communities because we have a labor crunch. And we don't have the same cost of living crunches happening to us from immigration that like the big centers are happening. Unfortunately, the government makes immigration decisions based on the largest pain points in the large centers. And so we kind of miss out. But because we don't have that labor pipeline coming in that we were hoping for, a lot of our businesses are leaning hard into productivity, what they can do on the ground. And they are making investments in things like robotics and new AI technologies, and taking a chance on developing and scaling up new innovative things to increase their productivity without the ability to increase their manpower, which is a huge crunch. So to sum up, uncertainty is the name of the game right now. There's a lot of wait and see from investment, and those who are on the ground and need to make moves right now are investing in productivity and innovation in order to scale up their output without the labor to do it.
Paul, for yourself, what's the mood on the ground about the last 12 months when you speak to leaders, community organizations, or even residents of the Central Alberta Economic Partnership?
Yeah, I think what Bob and Peter have said, I mean, definitely that applies in the Cape region. A lot of the things that we're trying to do in our area is, just leverage some of the things that we have. So, and I'm sure Bob and Peter are kind of in the same place there. So really, a big part of this, Bob alluded to the municipal election, and what you can learn from that, and all of us really having boards of directors that are largely populated by elected officials, that kind of changes things for us. It kind of refreshes people around the table, I guess, but it also provides us with a good opportunity to, bring them up to speed on what types of projects and what types of focus we should have. Um, of course, over the last year, we see lots of movement. We see some trends developing for sure in terms of carbon capture storage and sequestration. We've talked about, increasing emphasis on critical minerals and quantum in defense, as Bob pointed out. These are things that we have to look ahead and start thinking about how we're going to approach them relative to the communities that we serve. In the meantime, a lot of our communities in the region were focused on developing data and fiber networks so that they could be competitive in a rural area. So, many of our communities have high-speed internet connections and can do a lot more in terms of the bandwidth that's available. Of course, we living in Alberta, we have active oil and gas things happening there as well. But getting back to critical minerals, we were talking about companies in region that are developing brine-based lithium resources to do the mining there, and some great test projects like a company named E3 that's focused on that. Bottom line for us, I guess, is to try and identify those things that are, potentially holding us back, which Peter mentioned unemployment, but in particular, youth employment and sort of the effects of AI and how that's going to have an impact on the future. So all kinds of different things I think they're happening across the globe. The response to the tariffs, of course, is the main thing I think you saw early in the year. A lot of trepidation about moving, like just watching, wait and see what's going to happen, and then a bit of a holding pattern towards the end, and maybe a reality sinking in by the time we get to right about now, and then thinking more about alternative markets. So, talking about the types of places like overseas or different markets that we haven't developed in the past and trying to emphasize those. There's some good federal and provincial programs emerging to address that. So we're trying to help our members and industry connect with those resources.
Peter, I'm so happy that you talked about labor challenges because it was a question I didn't know who to pose to. So since you brought it up, I'm going to pose this question directly to you. Now, over the last 12 months, particularly over the last few months, the issue around temporary foreign workers has been the sort of touchstone that every politician in Ottawa is talking about moving away from temporary foreign workers and moving towards a more Canadian-based workforce. How would that impact, and how has that impacted the local economy in southern Alberta? Because many businesses rely on foreign workers to do work that, and I'm saying this as Chris Brown, not the people on this show, but Chris Brown saying this, a lot of these jobs Canadians don't want to do, hence why we need to bring in foreign workers. That is why it's there. We are finding it hard to find people to staff Tim Hortons up in Wood Buffalo because that is what the temporary foreign worker program was all about, to fill vacancies that were there. How has the conversation around temporary foreign workers impacted the local economy? And do you think it could be exacerbated in 2026 if the Carney government or the federal government decides to pull the strings back and say we're going to rein in who can actually come and work in Canada?
A few thoughts on this. So number one, yes, it's a big issue down south here. There's a lot of our production, like our crop and field production, greenhousing and stuff like that, that relies on seasonal labor being able to be brought in from other markets. And it's not that this labor is cheaper. It's not that, folks are getting a deal that they wouldn't be getting from Canadian workers. We don't have the seasonal labor pool down south here. We do not have it. And it's hard to get that kind of seasonal labor from, say, young people coming out of the city, because as you said, they don't want these jobs. It's hard to get young people interested in that kind of labor. Whereas in the international market from temporary foreign workers, it's there. And there's a reliable stream of folks who have connections already in southern Alberta or are hoping to use the temporary foreign worker program to build credentials and, a presence in Canada to help their own immigration process to the country. And we've relied on it for a long time. Now, it's important to note that even in the current day, immigration is not lower than it has necessarily been in the past. It's lower than the pandemic peak in which we surged immigration at the national level in order to counteract some of the deleterious effects of the pandemic on the economy. It helped to slow inflation. It helped give the economy an injection of much needed cash to prevent, things going into a decline, et cetera. There was a financial national region to surge immigration at that time. We still have over 1% immigration rate. That means every year we're bringing in over 1% of the population of Canada in new immigrants. And that's been a long-standing bipartisan policy at the national level to bring in enough immigrants basically to maintain a 1% population growth. Sorry, I said it wrong before. It's not 1% of the population of Canada. We bring in enough immigrants every year to maintain a 1% population growth. Right now, we're aiming at a little bit higher than that right now. So we're back to pre-pandemic levels. And that's largely driven by the fact that our domestic birth rate just keeps plummeting. Young people in my age range and younger are just choosing not to have kids. It's expensive to have kids. I've heard it described as the most expensive hobby you'll ever undertake. It's a lot of work. Most of us live on farms now where we need the free labor that comes from having children, et cetera, et cetera. It's very much a choice. And so that immigrant pipeline into the economy is essential to maintain a growing population. If we don't maintain a growing population, we have a whole new bag of economic problems that we have to undertake. And Canada's massive. We can accommodate many tens of millions of more folks in the economy before we hit anything resembling a problem of having too many folks. So this is the real conundrum that we're in. Bringing in new people to the economy does create some pressures. We have underinvested in infrastructure in order to accommodate a larger population for a long time. And that's the pain point that we are feeling. We are behind on catching up with infrastructure, and our municipalities are particularly feeling that crunch, because the crunch of not having enough infrastructure really hits people where they're at. You get more houses and a demand for more housing, then the municipality has to go and build out a whole bunch of more infrastructure. And we're also getting crunched on how much money is coming back to the municipalities to support that kind of growth. So we're at this interesting point. We know we need the labor, and we know we need to maintain immigration levels, but we are feeling the pain point from underinvestment and a surge that we experienced during the pandemic to mitigate some of the economic impacts of that. And we've got to feel our way through it, but I can't see the national government choosing to go below a 1% growth rate, because once again, that's a whole new suite of problems that we're not quite familiar with how to deal with. So they're likely to maintain it at least 1%. What we've got to navigate is the catch up on the infrastructure in the short term, and how this pertains to our temporary foreign worker program. Once again, immigration policy is not very nuanced. It would be nice if there was more carve-outs made for temporary foreign workers. I hope to see that. Our folks are definitely advocating for it. Fingers crossed.
Bob, for yourself, if we were to have this conversation 1 year ago on December 8, 2024, I could imagine talking to some of your mayors in your region that the outlook around the oil and gas sector would not be as positive as it is right now in 2025 with the recent MOU between the federal government and the provincial government. Looking back on the last 12 months, particularly in the oil and gas sector, because the Alberta hub area is pretty much a heavy oil gas producer, how has the oil and gas industry changed or adapted to the economic pressures we have seen over the last 12 months? And with the recent MOU signing, do you get a sense from speaking to people that there's a little bit of optimism going into 2026?
To answer your last question first, yes, there is optimism. I just wanted to take a step back to Peter's comments. And Peter, you hit the nail on the head. I always use the saying, everything we do touches everything we do. There's no way you can separate. Peter talked about immigration connected to housing, infrastructure. It goes on and on. Getting back to when you mentioned about, the jobs we need. The job report just came out, 34,000, the majority in a restaurant, food and accommodation. The other two were education and healthcare. So one was private and the other two were public. Now, we have to be conscious of that because it boggles my mind. You know, when Alberta was promoting come move to Alberta, jobs here and everything, why wasn't the planning of schools and infrastructure and everything taken at the same time? Because everything needs to work in parallel. And, you know, when I look at my region, if I was to draw a line halfway east and west, north of, say, St. Paul, the average hourly rate is $28 an hour. To the south, it's $22 an hour because of the oil and gas. The price of a Tim Hortons, whatever, I don't go to, there's no offense, Tim Hortons, but I don't stop too often.
They're not a
It's what the
sponsor, so
market.
go ahead and you can attack them.
Okay. Not that I want to. So everything's relative. You know, for me to have a living wage in Fort McMurray, and that report just came out, but we get all these stats and nothing changes. And it boggles my mind. The oil, and now getting back to your question about the oil and gas, to me, the oil companies are in the electricity business right now. That's what they're doing. You know, the cogen operations. Now, natural gas, LNG, we can actually ship out. So the demand for oil and gas. I mentioned we produce oil and we do have gas that comes up with it. So the oil and gas companies right now are really shifting their business plan and how they're looking at, which affects labor skills. Paul mentioned carbon capture pathways we have here. We have another one, Shell. I can't think of the name right now, but they're depositing carbon and it's open access where companies can come in. But all this information for communities, you know, we focus on high impact regional projects that increases the wealth of our community. And that's why communities need to work together and understand, because we're all experiencing the same problems. We'd like to work with the government of Alberta closer with their policies and everything so we can align what's happening at the grassroots level to what's happening maybe at those larger centers. Because trust me, you know, Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, Red Deer, Calgary, Edmonton, Grand Prairie, they're their own little economies, not little, I apologize, large economies. But when we work with communities of a population of 500, we need to ensure that we need to understand what rural is, because to this point, I don't think everybody agrees on what rural is. So it's tough to solve a problem when you can't get your definition. I think I'm going off on a tangent here, but Peter got me going because listening to him was incredible because he touched on all these things. But the governments continue to work in silos.
Okay,
one hand, the left hand doesn't.
I'm going
know
to
what the right
challenge
hand
you
is
here
doing.
a second, Bob, because I think this is an important conversation that we're having, but I think you're not saying the thing that I think you want to say, but I'm going to say it. This last municipal election, I want all three of you to respond to this. This last municipal election, we saw a move towards less regionalization, even though the Premier of Alberta said, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, your mandate letter says we want to regionalize everything. We want to make sure everyone's working together as a region. But we saw the removal of the Calgary Regional Metropolitan Board. We saw the removal of the Edmonton Regional Metropolitan Board. We saw many municipal leaders get elected saying we want to do it ourselves. When you look at your own backyards, are people taking regional cooperation around the economy serious? Or is that a conversation that we need to have not today, but we should have been having it on October 21st, the moment after the municipal election? Who wants to take that one?
If I could just start out, I don't mean to hog this. Again, Chris, you ask a great question. I go into a meeting with my municipalities and I ask three questions that I don't tell them to give me the answer. A, do you believe in economic development? B, do you believe in regional economic development? And here it is, the third question. Do you trust everybody sitting around the room? If the answer is yes to all three, now we can move on. And you're right, assessment is down right now. You know, it's just like how Alberta Hub, I do not promote one of my members over another one. I promote everybody in their regional context. Then the individuals that are either expanding their business or coming in say, Bob, I want to speak to these five. And if the cities, I have two cities, and the larger community, if they were to get it, the villages, the smaller ones, know they will get the spillover. Say somebody wants to live or whatever the case may be. If you understand the process and how regional works, like it's that in investment. And I think these are serious questions that newly elected officials need to have and understand, because it's all about education and what economic development is. And more importantly, expectations. I get every mayor, reeve, councillors want that investment in their community so they can get the taxes that leads to a better quality of life for their residents. But if you don't have what they want, would you tell them, hey, my neighbor 150 clicks down the road has it? That's where I'll end it.
Paul, do you want to add on that?
Sure. I think, I've been in this role for about 7 months now. So one of the things I really notice amongst our members is those who have kind of a growth mentality and are capable of kind of projecting into the future of what they want to see and what they expect. They buy in it more likely than those that have kind of a scarcity mindset. And a lot of small communities, they have that scarcity mindset because they're struggling to survive. In some cases, you're seeing communities across Alberta, villages or hamlets, they're being, absorbed by counties in a lot of cases. Things have changed. Since REITs were formed in the, early 2000s, the landscape of economic development in Alberta has changed somewhat with it. So there are a number of things that have been added. There are more communities that have economic development officers. There are, examples that we sort of work with the provinces, Invest Alberta and Invest Canada. Those organizations didn't exist 20 years ago. So then we're clamoring for some space as REITs to say, work with us. We will help you to get to that future destination where the economy is good, and you can participate in that. And unfortunately, if we did an analysis of the communities that we serve, you would see a close link between the ones that contributed to economic development in some form over the last few years, or 10 or 20 years, and the ones that didn't. And the ones that didn't are kind of the fiscal conservative, emphasizing organizations or municipalities that are really just what fuels a lot of this, I think, is we're going to have a zero tax increase. And when you start talking about zero tax increases, you start to critically look at everything in your budget. And so that's what all of our members do. They do it every year. But after an election, there's definitely a push in that direction. And we're also seeing kind of on a political level in and across Alberta, a tendency for that to be more and more of a concern. But again, I think it comes back to, do you have a scarcity mindset or do you have an abundance mindset? And if you can help people understand what economic development can do, they're more likely going to be in the scarcity side of the equation. And that's where Bob, in his comments about, education, really drives the point home. Big part of our job is letting people know what economic development is. And that usually starts with the question, what does it mean to you? And then we go from there, because every person has their own definition and every community has their own definition. And the more that we can get them on the same page, the more likely we're going to be successful.
If I've learned anything about talking to municipal leaders over the last 5.5 years since doing the show, is the best time to pass a 0% tax increase is the year after an election, to say that you've done what you said you were going to do, and the year before an election, so you can say, look what I've continued to do over the last 4 years. Those 3 years in between, what? I don't know what you're talking about. Peter, do you have anything to add on this comments?
Yeah, I had three trends in my mind. Scarcity, which Paul has covered brilliantly. The scarcity mindset is definitely important. And then number two and number three, a lack of leadership, and then the rise of subregionals. So I would say regional collaboration has suffered in the last few years from a lack of leadership coming from Edmonton, to be fair, because the entire regional push was started by the provincial government. Municipalities themselves don't have a mandate to do regional projects. And it was the provincial government who said, let's get the municipalities to work with us to help solve some of our problems so that we're having a more efficient spend of our taxpayer dollars, and saying, listen, guys, if you organize and work on these regional projects together, we're going to incentivize that through support, through encouragement, and through funding, basically putting funding up on the table in order to say, if we give you this much money, you have to match it with this much money to make sure everybody's got skin in the game. That leadership has vanished, and there's nobody in Edmonton anymore encouraging folks saying, hey, listen, guys, you should probably work together. And if you're willing to do that, we got your back. And that's just vanished. And it was an important part of the ecosystem. And then the last thing is, I don't think we should ignore the rise of subregionals. There's been more and more sub-regional partnerships. This is usually county level or like a few communities that are close together who have seen the benefits of collaboration coming from things like the RETAs, who are realizing the gap that the RETAs haven't been able to fully fill is the ground level work within our communities, the individual community economic development. But we've learned the value of collaboration from working on regional projects together. And if we get together and build trust and start collaborating on those community level projects together, we will have more success. And even in my own region, we've helped support the rise of subregionals within our 6 or 7 counties down here, to the point that they are doing community economic development quite efficiently, bringing us up to focus more on the regional stuff. I think you'll see that trend continue, particularly if the larger regional economic development alliances continue to face headwinds.
Okay,
I
so
just want to add to that.
Go for
Sorry.
it, Paul.
Yeah, I think, Peter, that's a great point, and we're definitely seeing that. And I'm going to say that one of the reasons for that rise of sub-regional economic development organizations is, and Peter kind of started off with this, the emphasis on project funding versus sort of ongoing operations funding. What that does is that incentivizes, we'll say, ad hoc or temporary organizations that may or may not have any kind of legal structure to go ahead and take on projects that RETAs may have tried to do in the past. But Peter did mention that a lot of this stuff, this community economic development work, is focused on kind of the business visitation and the business BR&E, we call it, business retention and expansion aspect of economic development. And the RETAs now are really focused on developing the conditions for investment through investment readiness. And investment readiness means, do you have all of your information squared up? Can you talk about your region? Can you talk about your community in a way that when someone knocks on the door, you have an intelligent response? And so I think that's one aspect. So it's sort of in the middle. We'll bring the sandwich back again. We're sort of getting sandwiched from top, bottom, and all sides on we'll call it competition within the ecosystem based on project funding. So I think that's something to consider. It doesn't. Yeah, it's a challenge, I guess, because we do need to, in the meantime, make sure our municipalities and industry are aware of what we're up to, and we need to do a great job of engaging them in the process. But I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, just to follow up, Paul, and thank you for that. The only thing that I'd like to add to that, it's not only about investment, and we talked about, having the foundation, because we address the barriers to investment, electricity costs, the harmonization of distribution rates. Why are we paying more money for electricity in rural versus the Calgarys, Edmontons, and everything like that? And that is why the RETAs exist, because again, the 35 municipalities I work with, same problem across the board. And if you go to the government one at a time for funding, what the RETAs have done is we can go for one funding application, whatever the grant is, provide specific information to the community. So we're saving money off the top right there. If it is about dollars and cents, but these sub-regional groups, because I'm sure Peter and Paul have seen this, and I'll look at my members and I'm going, yeah, everybody's doing the same thing with separate grants. And yet the outcome is providing information on a regional basis, over 3 million cultivated acres for rotation of crops and feedstock, but it's not one community. And that's where elected officials are seeing that. I challenge everybody to check the enrollment in your schools. That, the numbers tell the story. And that's the scary part that people aren't looking at. And this goes back to education, to Paul's comment, are you ready to rock and roll? If I come to your community, what do you have? Don't tell me you have a piece of land next to your community, because what you're trying to do is sell me a pasture. That ain't working, you know. And I don't mean to be flippant, but we're getting to a point right now where rural Alberta and these communities, if it's not regional, and you know, we're going to struggle. I see it coming, and the next 3-4 years do not bode well for what our future is looking like. So, not to paint a bad picture, because there's opportunities, but it's understanding how we can address these issues on a regional basis as opposed to individual.
Just a point of curiosity, Bob. Are you saying that the enrollment in schools in your region is down or up?
Trending down for
Trending
the
down.
most
Okay.
part. Yeah.
Yeah,
And again,
we have the opposite problem in the South. It's just everything is stuffed, packed. Our rural communities are growing and bursting at the seams. If a house goes up for sale in my most remote hamlet or village, it sells. But once again, the solutions are regional. Like they have to involve collaboration. Our communities cannot afford to build aging infrastructure or replace it. Their financial resources have been squeezed so tightly, and the only way through it is collaboration with other levels of government and with each other.
yeah, Paul, I just want to, before you chime in, and again, we're doing the same things the same way. Like back when hospitals were built in the 70s, everybody got a hospital. Where are they today? We're building senior center. That we continue to do the same thing over and over again. And when that time frame of 30, 40 years goes through, we're back to the same problem. Sorry, Paul, 1967, the centennial year, all the grants went out. Every community built a community hall or something. Well, guess what? End of life. Everything's got to be rebuilt. Are we going to change that system? I'd like to think maybe, but I don't think so. So, Peter, yeah, everything just came. And yeah, Southern Alberta is seeing a lot more growth than Northern Alberta, and it could be on geography or whatever the case may be. Sorry, Paul.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I think, I'm sure within all of our regions, I mean, the trend is pretty clear. You talk about the, centennial projects back in the day, but in the meantime, the rural population of Alberta relative to urban population has consistently shrunk over time. It's, less than 30% of what it once was. And again, the definition of what rural is in the eyes of the governing party of the day, that's all very relative. So, those are the challenges, and that's a big threat when you start talking about, what's going to happen. It's the same story really about what can we do to retain our young people, because everyone that leaves and decides that they want to live in a city that's much larger, leaves a bit of a hole back in their hometown. So that happens, every day across Alberta.
Speaking of the definition of rural, and this is just me saying this again, it may be differ in Edmonton, but it drastically differs in Ottawa. Because in Ottawa, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's any municipality under a population of 100,000 people is considered rural. So Airdrie, you are considered rural. That seems very weird to me, but here we are in 2025. So maybe the definition of rural needs to be defined, not just in Alberta, but also in Canada as well, to update our standards from 1867 when it was officially defined. Now, we have been talking a lot over the last 40 minutes, and it seems like we're painting a very unrosy photo of the economic landscape in Alberta right now. So I'm going to ask this sort of good picture story, a question, and then we'll turn to our last two questions. In your own region, is there one initiative that you saw in 2025 that you look at and say, this is what regional economic development looks like? What is that story for your own particular region? Because the one thing I hear from municipal leaders over and over and over again is, we will steal from the best, and we are not willing to deny that. We will go out and take what other municipalities are doing good and bring it to our community. So for your regions, starting with Paul, what is the story that you look at in 2025 and you say, you know what, this community is doing this right? What is that for you? Or this area is doing it right?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of things that touch on carbon capture storage in our region. So first of all, you've got an incredible example in the town of Innisfail with Deep Sky Carbon Capture Lab. Basically, that there are about, I think it's 12 different carbon capture storage examples that they're testing in that area. And then taking that sort of like right next door in the same industrial park, we've got a diesel to hydrogen conversion plant that's doing that work for CPKC. But always in our region as well as, one of the major drivers, if not the major driver in the region, is our petrochemical complex and Joffrey Prentice, just east of the city of Red Deer. And how that and its connection to the carbon trunk line can create lots of great opportunities in the future by building a more robust cluster, whether that's, getting other sort of players in the neighborhood, whether that's some of our brine-based lithium guys, or if that's some of the future graphite / carbon economy developed in the region. Those are some big keys for us. Of course, there's always the bread and butter in our region, like we're talking agriculture, ag tech, leveraging the relationships with our colleges and polytechs in the region, so Wilkes College and Red Deer Polytech. Those are kind of the big things I think we need to hook onto. There's crossover into quantum. There's all kinds of talk about defense. And, I think the more we think about these things and prepare of how the best ways to develop the economy on those topics, that's what the future is going to look like, in my opinion.
Bob, for yourself, is there a story that happened in Alberta Hub that you look at and say, this is what regional cooperation, regional partnership actually looks like?
Yeah, there's two, but the first one that really stands out in my mind is the Alberta Hub Skyways project, drones, UAVs. What drove this is we have 10 regional airports throughout our region, and it's fair to say they're not all exactly making money. They are sucking money in. So drones, as everybody knows, is disrupting industries. We have ATCO using it to inspect grids, Apex pipelines doing that. And there's now drone delivery. And with our First Nations and Métis settlements, and our weather isn't exactly the best at times, can we fly that drone and deliver medication? How is freight being moved? So we did the first phase last year. The Alberta Hub Skyways worked with Arium Analytics, geospatial information, that we've established routes that a drone can fly, say from Edmonton to Vegreville on and upwards. Imperial Oil has their own drone fleet, and they are looking to remove freight off highways, environmentally friendly, and using drones there. CFB 4-Wing, we have the largest air weapons range. Companies can rent space, providing the military isn't blowing stuff up on that air weapons range, to test your drone. I know down south in the Foremost region, Quinto is doing that. I know Foremost has experienced funding problems right there. So to me, this is true collaboration because we're connecting communities. I can't just fly my drone in my county or my town. And what's really cool, when I went to the Aerial Evolution Conference in Edmonton not too long ago, businesses and companies were saying we can't fly drones in the cities. And I'm going, really? You should check out rural Alberta. Same with the AI. We have AI going there. So to me, this regional collaboration, that I can fly a drone through my region, and every community is set up with the protocols, the everything like that, turning hopefully airports into revenue generating entities for applied research and ag, oil and gas delivery, along with that. And this goes to Peter's point when he talked about the internet. These drones got to connect. And when, we got to make sure everything is working in parallel. And quickly, the other thing, the other project, the land and buildings project we did, because the GOA 2 years ago in April came out with their site selection tool. One of the real estate boards did not sign. That's our region. we haven't been able to take advantage. So Alberta Hub, through funding, we just soft launched it, leveraging what the government did. And we tailored it because it's important to put your value proposition, why that building or piece of land you're selling. Is it good for ag, manufacturing? So again, regional collaboration. These two projects, I feel we knocked it out of the park. And we're taking it to a step two because getting back to Peter's point and what Paul said about students, young kids, you can write your own programs because you have the drone, but then you have the technology that goes on the drone. So it's the best of both worlds, applied research, our colleges doing that. Yes, kids, I want you to go explore the world, but I'm giving you a reason to come back home. So those are two projects we really looked. 2025 was really good, and hopefully to carry it through to the 2026.
Peter, for yourself before the final question.
Yeah. Big initiative down here that stands out in the last year was our resiliency task force. So after Donald Trump came back into power and we suddenly had a very uncertain trade environment again, Southgrow and our partners, we set up a resiliency task force in the region. It involved a whole bunch of different organizations, two RETAs, the City of Lethbridge's Economic Development Organization, Community Futures, etc. And we sat down and we planned out, okay, what could we actually do to help in this crazy environment that we're in? And we divided up the tasks by bucket and areas of proficiency. So for Southgrow, we got assigned export development. We've never worked on export development before because it's not an area of opportunity where we can add value in the past because our businesses very happily export. And so we went out and researched how on earth an economic development organization in an agri-food location like Southern Alberta can actually assist. And I've spent the last 6 months now with a pivoted work plan, learning how to do market entry for companies into places like Japan and China and other locations in Southeast Asia. And now we're working on disseminating that information out to regional businesses. Other organizations within our bucket have worked on things like government relations, specific investment attraction in this market, data acquisition, and direct industry supports, like down to the minutia of, okay, so you have a new tariff environment. How should you be looking at your supply chain and recoding your exports in order to get the most out of our free trade agreements? That's not my bucket, thankfully, but there are people within our ecosystem working on things like that. And it's been a real beautiful success story to see where we've all come together as professionals and said, what can we do for the region?
My final question, I had two final questions, but I'm going to sort of merge them and sort of try to make it sound like I'm smart for my final last question, but I need all three of you, if you don't mind. At the beginning of the interview, Peter said it, I think the best. 2025 could be described the year of uncertainty. It is the uncertain year that we had of everything that was going on globally. We didn't know how we would be on December 8th as of recording this. Based on what you're seeing on the ground in your respective regions today, what do you see as the biggest challenges or economic opportunities facing your regions in 2026? Bob, I'm going to start with you.
The high cost, and not only affecting municipalities, but business and industry. I think that's going to be one of the largest barriers. And when I say high costs, operating costs, I mentioned price of labor, electricity. That needs to be addressed because it is stopping investment, specifically in my region, areas like that. The opportunities, I think there's opportunities all around us. And it goes back to what Paul said and Peter have said, Peter's with the export, that we are willing to work together to address it. We know municipalities don't have the financial resources or the capacity, and one of the reasons RETAs like ours exist is to address the capacity that most of our members don't have. It's not like me, Paul, or Peter can go work on a daily basis with them, but we can add that support. I think municipalities really need to step back and review what they've been doing and what's today, and how do we address this moving forward? So, and under that, everything else could either happen. Like I tell municipalities, the elected officials, your role is to create an environment for good things to happen or not good things to happen. It's your choice. The second thing is, do you have all the relevant current information for you to make a reasonable decision? To me, once we've given them that, and that's our role, we provide municipalities with support and information on our why we're doing it. But if you're going to carry something from 1960, 70, 80, 90 into today, it isn't going to work. And we've proved it time and time again. I don't have all the answers. I failed more times than I've won, but at least now I know what not to do, kind of thing. And to me, it's those two barriers, because when we say communities, we're talking about business and industry. If I took all the business and industry out of these communities, what would you have? Nothing. And that includes your social programs, healthcare, education, recreation. That's why I believe the three of us do what we do. It's not a pipeline. It's not a drone. It's social programs. It's healthcare. It's schools that are teaching kids what they need for today. That, to me, is what I believe us three do. A better quality of life. And when we're all said and done, maybe at the EDA, we'll sit back with a glass in our hands and say, hey, we were part of the process that helped move this along, So that to me is what, to me, it's all about.
Paul, for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to continue to see some struggles when we're talking about workforce, in particular, how businesses are responding to AI and what kind of an impact that has. The affordable housing discussion will continue. We, go in with a little bit of a sideways look at what the federal government is offering, what the province is offering in terms of affordable housing programs. But back to Bob's point about capacity, I think everything that we do that helps our members move forward, get a little bit more confident about where they're at, and being confident enough to invest in their communities in different ways. The different pillars of what makes the economy are important. So, generally speaking, when we talk to municipal leaders, if you're building quality of life, you're contributing to economic development. So if you're in a community that wants to be a place where people want to live and work, that is definitely the right step in that direction. But in the next year, I guess we're gonna focus on just making sure that we're stabilizing our region in the best ways that we can. And I always say that that's a process of the relationships that we make. So we're kind of all in the relationship building business, and the more we bring people in the region together, the more likely we're going to solve problems and we're going to do good things. And that's kind of the virtuous cycle of being part of ARETA. Is the more you involve people, the more information you get, and then you can start talking about targets and reaching into the future.
Peter, final word to you.
Yeah, I'll end on the positive note, but I'll start with the negative thing that we're likely to face in the next year, and that's more uncertainty. And it's a real bloody shame. The entire world is dealing with uncertainty right now. We've got more geopolitical tension than we've had since the end of World War II, at least the end of the Cold War, and a lot of movement within the business space because of Trump's war on globalization and the shifting tariff environment and trade relationships that are happening out there. Now, the crazy thing is that everybody's experiencing uncertainty. And if I could ask for one thing for Christmas from both the provincial and federal governments, it would be give us policy certainty. Because in a world of competitors who do not have certainty for their own particular problems, those jurisdictions that come out and send a very clear, strong, loud signal that we are providing stability and certainty, and you can come here and build your business case and nobody's going to pull the rug out from underneath your feet. That would drive investment more than dropping tax rates, more than any other of the levers that are currently available right now. I want certainty for Christmas from the other orders of government, and that will create a lot of opportunities and wins for everybody. Now, the good news for Southern Alberta in particular, and it's an all of Alberta story because ag is really one of the fundamental drivers of our economy in general, is that food demand is just going up and up and up. And Canada and Alberta is a certain place in which to safely and reliably grow food. We, you know, crossing my fingers on this, nobody's going to invade or bomb us or, mess with our fundamental ability to scale and increase the production of food for a very hungry world. And I'm not just talking about areas that might be war torn. I'm talking about areas that are very, very exposed to climate change. We sent people to Singapore this fall to learn about the agri-food trends and concerns that are happening in that area as we work to build our trade relationships. And last year, the folks in Southeast Asia were talking about climate change overwhelmingly and innovation. How do we create more food on a smaller landmass and in the face of changing global conditions, changing weather conditions that are really hurting us? This year, they were talking about stockpiling, which was alarming, but that's the world that we're moving into. And Canada and Alberta can scale and increase our supply of food to a very hungry and very worried world. And everybody needs food. So our economy will benefit from that. And there'll be lots of new opportunities. Change also meets opportunity. So I would end on that positive note.
Well, you end on that positive note.
Note.
You thought you said that, and I did have one final question. And I would just, if you all can do it within like 30 seconds or less, that'd be greatly appreciated. 2025 really showed Canada our inadequacies around supplying our own self, actually working towards helping our fellow Canadians, whether that be through the economy, whether that be through oil and gas, whether that be through food production. We really saw our shortcomings when it came to production and procurement within our own borders. Do you think 2026 is going to shine a light on that even more? And do you think that in 2026, Canadians are going to finally wake up and say, okay, let's start making the things that we need in Canada and stop relying so heavily on foreign markets to produce the products that we can be doing in our own borders? Paul first.
Wow, great question, Chris. Yeah, I think that when we start talking about preparing our communities and so on, we do need to keep emphasizing those cross-provincial trade barriers that are there. I think when you get people into a kind of a demi-crisis mode, which we might be in or going through right now, I think that actually creates the conditions for solutions and being creative and coming up with things we've never thought about. I think about some examples, the last oil and gas downturn around 2014, that pushed people to start thinking seriously about alternatives. But in Alberta, we have this tendency to just, hey, no problem. If it's not working, it'll come back. And we need to actually kind of be more urgent about it.
Peter, for yourself?
I think there's positive indications for taking it seriously. The Trump environment scared everybody on the back end of the pandemic. And it's no secret that China intends to reunify by 2027. And what that means for the global trade environment is part of that giant uncertainty thing. We need to ensure that we have good relationships with our allies. That is absolutely imperative for Canada because we cannot build out the manufacturing base that we need to fill the gaps domestically in the timescales needed, and we don't have the labor for it. We need our allies. We need solid trade relationships with those areas of the globe that we can send our product to and which we can get the products that we can't get from. That's really the imperative.
Now, officially, final word to you, Bob, and then I will wrap up. Go for it.
Paul summed it up beautifully. Peter did as well. The only thing I'd like to add, this goes back to Peter's point, there's no policies. There's no policies designed. Canada doesn't have a manufacturing policy. We are good, raw goods, ship it away, we buy it back, more important. Again, I don't know why it took Trump to get elected to wake us up and say, hey, I think the Rita's been talking about this for, the 20 or the 15 years I've been involved, but there's no will to change the status quo, which is causing this problem. And again, folks, I never asked anybody if you like the system or hate the system, but we need to change. And it starts to, again, I'll say what Peter said. change the policies that allows us to do what we need to do. But we're going to shake up a lot of foundational institutions that have been here since Buddha was a baby, and the right to change is not there. But let's start with the policy. I'm glad the provinces are getting rid with trade barriers, but they're still struggling with that. I don't know what it's going to take more than Trump to do what he's done, to wake us up and say, hey, if we don't start feeding ourselves and then the world, yeah, the policy, the will has to be there to change that policy and to approach it.
Well, we will see what happens in 2026. I want to thank Peter, Paul, and Bob for joining us greatly today. I don't know.
Sounded familiar.
I
You
want
got to have
thank...
a female guest named Mary next time with Peter and Paul.
Well,
Ironically, I have Arrogant Worms songs going through my head now.
I want to thank all three of you gentlemen for joining us today on the show. Greatly appreciate it. To learn more about their respective organizations, the links will be in the show notes below, but also if you're watching this at a later date on TV, the links will be showing up as I'm speaking right now. So check out the three organizations that each of men represent. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us today, and greatly appreciate it, gentlemen.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
From the smallest village to the largest city, across every region of the province, Alberta Municipalities represents the communities where over 85% of Albertans live. AB Munis provides a united voice for 265 of Alberta's 330 municipalities, including summer villages, towns, cities, and specialized municipalities. As Alberta's largest municipal group, AB Munis listens to municipal leaders and advocates for solutions to their common issues. Additionally, AB Munis supports local governments by providing services specially designed to meet their operational needs. And they bring their members together regularly so they can share ideas and information so that their communities can thrive. Check out Alberta Municipalities at abmunis.ca and follow them on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, now called X. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs. Now, we want to take a moment and say thank you. Thank you to our listeners, thank you to our viewers who have tuned in over the last 12 months and made Municipal Affairs the best season it has had this year. Now, next week, we will be doing something a little bit different. Last December, we did our year in review series for the entire month. But this year, we're doing it in a week. We're going to be sitting down with municipal leaders from across Canada and talking to them about the last 12 months in their respective provinces. So, tune in for those episodes, as you will not want to miss those. So subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform, or if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button now. So until next week, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with a brand new episode of Municipal Affairs shortly. Till then, everyone.